Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here at the Snowden Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD, along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette, and our very special guest today, Montreal Mayor Soraya Martinez Ferrada. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. Good morning.
Do you remember the last time you were here?
I know, he wasn't here.
I think
He was sick that time.
He was sick that day.
Yeah.
nothing
So
personal.
No, I know, you weren't there.
Yeah,
So,
but we were at the Seagull Center.
we did.
But it worked
yes.
out well because you're mayor.
Yeah.
Yes, well,
So
yeah,
there you go.
You brought good luck.
Yeah,
There is
Okay,
that.
good.
Yeah.
So look, let's talk about the fact that, time flies, as they say. 100 days will be February 20th, so
Yeah.
we're pretty close to that, the first 100 days in office. The obvious question, I guess, for me is, how has it been? Is it everything you thought it would be? It's kind of a generic sort of question. And maybe what's the biggest surprise that you've encountered in the first 100 days?
So, well, as you know, I was city council in 2005. My biggest surprise would be that maybe the city hasn't changed that much, which is a bit of a, after 20 years, you would have thought that
Yeah.
a few things have changed. I think the machinery of the city is still very, heavy and not agile, not efficient, and I think that hasn't changed. So that would be my
Okay.
surprise. And 100 days goes really fast. So we're in the last, few days before the 20th February and announcing a lot of things because we have done a lot of things in the first 2 months, and we still have about 30 days to go, a couple of days to go. But I think the biggest challenge is to show that you come as a new administration and you want to change the course of the big ship. And City of Montreal is a Titanic, right? Not only one, but it has another one pulling in the back, which is 19 boroughs. So it's a really big and complex governance, and to do a few things that will change the course of what we're
To your promises, and we know it's funny because people look at pledges that people make before they're elected and say, well, you know what, it's easy to say, I'll do this, this, and this. But to your credit, to be fair, you talked about unaudited bike paths.
Yeah.
That's a story that's in the news this week. You talked about job cuts at City Hall. That's a story that is. So you've already begun following through on some of the promises that you made. I will ask, though, with respect to the job cuts. So I think you said 1,000 job cuts over 4 years. First 250 are now. You knew there would be pushback.
Those are white collar.
Promised it. White collar jobs. Are you concerned?
It's very important that they know and employees know it has nothing to do with the competence and the quality of employees that we have, which they're amazing. Even the ones that we actually announced that were going to be cut, they're still at work working with us doing the transition. We cut 7 direction positions, which is we started at the head, and now we're going down the structure. And I understand the pushback, but it's necessary. There's no way that we will give the capacity of Montreal to have ambition and eventually do great things if we can get, the simple basic services get done.
I just want to point out one thing with respect to those, and I read the union saying, wait a second, we're cutting these jobs and all we're saving, is $16 million, making it seem like that's not very significant in a budget of over $7 billion. But 16 million is still 16 million?
Well, it's a lot of money, for one. And not only are we saving $16 million, but we actually looked back at the budget and sent more money to the boroughs. For the first time in over 20 years, we gave more money in terms of their own budget. So that's a good start. That we're responding to the fact that they need to have the means to do the work locally and their services locally. So not only are we saving money, but we're actually sending money from the central to the boroughs.
And speaking of saving money, you've made a lot of your constituents, those who voted for you, proud. You've decided to put the kibosh on the Comedian Park in terms of doing anything and spending any more millions for something that a lot of the people in the city didn't want in the first place. And you're going into a lot of other areas that you said you would. You're looking at bike paths. You're looking at all sorts of areas that a lot of the previous administration didn't really want to get too involved in, and you're not nervous about upsetting people in the process about all of this.
Well, I think when you talk to Montrealers, many of them will tell you that they're not against bicycle paths. They just want to make sure that if we're doing any projects, we're respectful of the human landscape where they live in, and you are considering businesses, seniors, and whoever will be impacted by that bicycle path. The best example I can give you is when we got into power was at Atakaken, which is a street right next to Berry Street, going down to La Commune. So Olympia, which was one of the theater halls there, was furious because he was looking at this and saying, I'm going to lose my business. There's no way I can be a theater and don't have access to, artists that will come with the trucks. And so we looked back, we stopped the project, and within a month, we redesigned the project that we had and made this bicycle path a bit smaller, but just enough that it was secure for them, but it would allow us to bring back some parking, and also making sure that everybody would be taken care of in terms of, making sure that everybody find their way.
On that note, you've become a little more sensitive than the last administration to downtown gridlock, which is like killing a lot of businesses, sending business to the West Island, to Laval, to the South Shore, and everything else. I mean, you're upset with the fact, understandably, that St. Catherine Street up and down. It's very quirky, the whole business of what gets closed, and what I enjoyed yesterday, you announced the fact that you don't want the orange cone to be Montreal symbol.
So you're gonna have to change your hat.
You know,
You're gonna have to change
I'll
your
have
hat.
to change it for next year.
You will have to change your hat.
As much as I enjoyed talking about Coney Island, I would be very happy that.
Well, you have to start somewhat small.
Yes.
To show that it can be done, and that's what we decided to do. So I decided that I want to manage better the construction sites downtown. Downtown, as mayor of Montreal, I'm mayor of the borough of Ville-Marie, so downtown core. And so we delimited an area which is Guy to Saint Laurent and Sherbrooke to La Commune, and say, let's do a pilot project and be a municipal hub of innovation in that space. And at the same time, help downtown to be relaunched, because we want people to come back to downtown. And one of those things is that we don't have to have orange cones, and we can find other ways to, make it nice and beautiful and plan it better.
You're planning AI. How does AI come into this picture?
So that's interesting, because I was asked that question yesterday, and AI will never replace human, for sure. And we have to understand that. But we have to understand that AI will be 100 more times important than what internet was when we started internet. Now, it has to be to the service of us, humans, and not the other way around. But again, it's a tool. And it's a tool that can help you manage a really big number of data, which when you're planning, when I got into power and to the borough, I asked how many construction sites or projects just downtown do we have right now? There were about 2,000. That doesn't include like private, projects, and so it's a lot. It's in a big amount of information, very difficult for one sole person to kind of evaluate. So AI comes into how can I feed that platform to give you an idea of if I close this street, what's the impact on fluidity? If I do this and this at the same time, what's going to happen? So then you can have a better plan in terms of having layers of analysis that a sole human can do alone.
Which is what we didn't have. I know this came up before. This has always come up, is planning.
Planning,
you can go ahead and work on a street, but if you didn't tell anybody you're going to be working on that street, you just make things that much worse. So you're going to have a department now looking after this?
So we're going to start in the borough of Ville-Marie. So we're doing that in Ville-Marie. But at the end of the day, a human will have to say, no, that project will have to wait.
Based on what AI said.
Based on analysis of the impact of that project at that moment in that area.
Right.
So it has to be, and again, there's also the evaluation of the risk. If I don't do the work that's needed, what's the impact if I don't do it? So so there's many layers of understanding, and AI will help you do that.
I know we had a gentleman who owns a pizzeria shop. I know you know the story
Yes.
right in the heart of Dentana. What's happened to that street, I guess it's Stanley,
Yeah.
has been devastating.
Yeah.
I'm sure for others, not just for him, to the point where he may have to close his business. And I know, as mayor, you see something like that and you realize we have to do something, help.
Absolutely.
What's the answer to that, like,
So-
in the short term?
Oh, well, in the short term, we're looking into the program, see if, it doesn't make any sense that on one side of the street, you don't have access to it, and the other side. So we're working with the department to see if we can do anything about that. It's the threshold of a program is always very tricky because, you can say, well, this stops here, but the other person that's right next to the line says, well, I'm right next to the line. You said, yeah, but there has to be a line, right?
Right.
If you're retired at 65, you're retired at 65. That's when you have access to your retirement. If you say, well, I want to retire at 64, we're like, well, yeah, but you're not 65.
Yeah.
So there has to be a line, and that's always very difficult to draw the line. Now, would the line being more intelligent to include it, the whole street on the both sides at the beginning? I think so, absolutely. Now, how can I change that now? I don't know. That's where I'm looking into.
But that's something that AI could obviously, before this even
Well, of
started,
course.
suggest, right?
Well,
So-
it's
At least come up with another color
Yeah,
than
exactly.
orange.
Come up with a plan.
yeah, exactly. So I think there's many other AI has many use that we can do, and we want to make sure that innovation hub will have that. But we're also going to do a call for solutions for small SMEs, startup.
Okay.
We have many of those.
Well,
Montreal's the hub of the
Yeah.
artificial intelligence.
To Bill's point before, though, the previous administration, when it came to small businesses, didn't have a great track record, as
Yeah.
we know. Has there been
Yeah, I'll give
someone
you.
reaching out?
I'm going to give you an example. Potholes.
Ah,
What's that?
potholes.
Potholes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So we had a contract that came by the end of 31st of December. City had started a call for proposal. Nobody bid on it. Two companies bid
This
on
is
it.
before you were mayor.
Well, no, it started just when we got into power. The city already started the process
Okay.
of the call for bid. The companies that bidded on them couldn't respond to the
Conditions?
these exigences, way the conditions. So what would you do? I said, okay, we'll have smaller lots of the city that we're gonna propose, and we're gonna call smaller companies. And we invited over 60 companies to bid on the smaller lots. At the end of the day, it cost us 50% less.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
smaller companies are have less cost in
Sure.
terms of, right? And we're a city of small companies, a lot. 99% of our companies are SMEs. So that's one way to do it.
Okay.
And I want to do more of that. I think because at the end of the day, we have to have more for our money.
I didn't even know we had 60 companies that were able to fill
Yeah,
potholes in
right.
the city.
Yeah.
So
Because
who knew?
well, potholes is people with a shovel,
Right.
and it's people. It's not. Yes, there's equipment that you can use, and we use them with blue collars in some areas, but many of the contracts that we get, it's actually humans that put the gravel in the
Yeah.
hole. So
Okay.
it's not a machine. It's not
Yeah.
an old machine.
Had you any idea how bad our infrastructure was before? I mean, I know you had an idea, but to the
Yeah.
extent now that you're
Yeah.
learning just about
Yeah.
potholes and all these other
I think
things,
in
is shocking to you?
yeah. I mean, of course, and I think every administration that comes into power will say the same thing.
Yeah.
Our roads are a catastrophe. I mean, it's not different. I think for the past 30 years, we haven't taken care of our streets the way that we should have done, right? Right now, the city of Montreal puts about 67% of the investment in maintenance. That number should be 75%. So we have to increase the amount of money that we're putting into infrastructure and maintenance. Now, if you do that, what do you drop? Because that's the idea. We brought with Claude the rate of our debt ratio to 100% a year before because it costs money. A debt is like your credit card. You pay interest on your credit card. This year we paid $97 million more of interest.
Wow.
So we have to bring that debt ratio back to a normal rate, and then rebalance the way that you're putting money into maintenance of a road. Will we fix all the roads? I mean, I don't live in the pays délicats, like we say, right? I mean, we'll do the best we can. We have to do so much more. But the reality is that we have to increase the money of maintenance, but what we're going to drop. And that's the job that we have in the next few months.
That's one of the things when we go back to the people that are going to be laid off, these white collar jobs, people, and their position is, well, services to the citizens will necessarily be cut by virtue of the fact there's not going to be as many people. That's not the case?
No, that's not the case. We are going to be sure that everything that we look at is, if you're sitting on the chair, does that chair give services to the citizens? What does that mean in terms of the city first mandate? And I think we have to go back to the role of the city first and foremost. That's the first thing. So it has nothing to do with the person. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the direct service to the citizens. And that's how we're going to look at in the next few months, every single department and every single program that we have. And the last few years, the city center hired over 3,000, almost 3,000 cadres et professionnels. That's not blue collars. That's about 29% of increase, 2% of blue collars. And that's a number that I've shared with you and during the campaign, and that's the reality. So I know they're mad. I know they're not happy about this, but it's something that we need to do. We have no choice.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowden Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the home of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowden Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowden Delicatessen.
When you were first elected, you said one of your biggest challenge would be housing, and in terms of finding homes for the unhoused. How are we doing on that front?
So we started changing the bylaw on the Métropole Mix, the famous 2020.
Right.
We made it more efficient, more agile for the transition. We're working on a new way of how the city will be a financial partner. 2 projects that will need to be built. So that means, tax breaks, free permits. The land of the city, can it be leased in a very long time lease so it doesn't cost anything? So we're looking into all the tools that the city has that can help lower the cost of construction and also accelerate the construction of projects. So that's where we already started that. So the 1st of March, we did a list of all the buildings and lands that the city has bought in the last few years and seeing which of those are ready and we can help build fast. So there's 40 of them that will be made public on the 1st of March. We put about almost $80 million around decontamination, demolition, pre-development money for nonprofit to come and be partners to eventually maybe even the private sector to construct more quickly. So that's what we did in the past 2 months. That was a big one actually, because it took a lot of time to kind of figure out the transition from a bylaw that has an impact on the market, especially on the real estate. But I think we found the right
So
transition.
with respect to the private sector, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we know the 2020 thing, which didn't work out regardless how well it might have been in theory.
Mm-hmm.
What's been reaction from the private sector to
Well,
your
super
plan?
happy. I mean, they're very happy. I mean, what they need is previsibility, right? And what I want is real social and affordable housing, because the crisis that we have right now in the housing, it's not the 5th quintile. It's the first 2, like 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah.
And that we need to be partners with the private sector eventually to do it. And they've been very, very supportive in terms of the transition that we're doing in 2020.
I know too, the argument's always been, I used to hear this from developers, red tape. It's so hard to get anything done with the city. Yeah. What are you doing to change that?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, I think that will be the other big challenge, because we have 19 boroughs. We have to get to a point where we're all, in a way, treating projects in the same way. But boroughs will tell you this is our jurisdiction in terms of permits. So that's going to be the challenge, I think, for the next few months, to work with the boroughs and making sure that
you're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Another one of your dreams, I would think, is to bring the luster back to the city like the old days when Montreal was like thought of in terms other than potholes, but like a very interesting capital, Expo, Olympics, and all the rest. I know, like now you're making a bid for the
NATO Bank.
NATO Bank here. You're going to be up against
Yeah.
Toronto and Vancouver and all the rest, which would. How difficult is it to try to establish that like Montreal is in the game again?
Um, it's actually, I don't think that's difficult. We are going to be actually presenting the whole mobilization of the Montreal Inc. and organizations, associations around this idea. So actually, I think it helped create this kind of energy, saying, okay, we can do this together. Getting the PM, Prime Minister Legault, to be here to do that with us. I think it really gave a sense of, okay, how can I help to make the city shine again? And I think it's actually created this movement that people, I think one of the challenges we have right now is managing the help. Everybody wants to help. Like, and I feel like we get calls and emails and saying, I want to help. This is what I can do. If you need me, I'm there. So we're managing the help. But in this case, it was easy to mobilize everybody, and I think it's going to be very good for the city.
You brought up Premier Legault, and I know in the past, the argument or the contention for some people is he really doesn't care about Montreal. It's not vote rich for him, so why bother? So far in the 100 days that you've been in, what's it been like dealing with the province?
Actually, very good. I think a new administration gives a new opportunity to have a new relationship. Conversations. I've met with the Prime Minister 3 times already. Every time we have a really, really good conversation.
Are you talking about Mark Carney now, or
no?
François
I'm
Legault?
sorry, Premier. Is it Premier?
Premier
in English?
Legault. Okay.
Yeah, Premier Legault. So we've had really good conversations, and of course, and we've said to each other, there's a few things where we'll maybe not agree, but there's things that we actually really agree really strongly, and the Bank of NATO is one of them. And other than it may seem not be a Montreal, he lives in Montreal. He's a Montrealer. He understands what Montreal means for the province of Quebec. We need to do better in terms of us, the city of Montreal, to show the regions that we're actually together. We're not in opposition. When we go well, you do well, and vice versa. So I think it's more of how can we collaborate. I'm mayor of Montreal, but I'm also the president of la communauté urbaine de la métropolitaine, which is 82 municipalities. And I will have comment dire, un discours inaugural?
A talk.
Consultation?
No, I will have a talk.
Conversation.
Conversation.
I have a speech at the CMM next week where that will be my message. My message is we're all in this together. The region of, when you go out internationally, you talk about Montreal, you don't say I come from Beaconsfield. You say I come from the region of Montreal.
Right.
You don't say, right? So I think in that spirit of being together, I think Quebec understands that. So I think that conversation with Quebec, I think it's in a better term.
One thing, you are at loggerheads, and Montreal has immigration. They have been very keen on cutting, and I know, like the program by which people who have lived and worked here for a while, they're getting very tough with that. Although the new CAC.
I think there's movement there.
There's some movement, but that's got to be particularly sensitive to you with talk about cutting back.
I think the conversation around immigration has become very difficult because we put everything in the same basket. Do I think immigration has to be very coordinated and planned, and people need to know what they can expect when they move here? No, I mean, absolutely. And as a government and as a city and as a government of Quebec, do you want to control the immigration because you want to make sure that you have the services that will be provided to the newcomers? Absolutely. The PEC is something else.
Yeah.
We asked these people to come because we knew that in some areas we had a deficit of labor.
Right.
And we wanted a labor francophone, most of it, and that's what we got. So we're mixing up that with the whole other aspect of immigration. And so on this part, I've said to the Premier, we agree on the coordinated and planned immigration. Totally agree with that. On the pack, I don't. Because this is people that are in Montreal right now. I don't want to lose any Montrealer. We need them. And, I want to keep them. So it's totally different conversation.
Yeah.
I would ask to go back, and this is kind of out of left field, but John Furlong, who was the head of Canada's Olympic delegation in Vancouver in 2010, just published an op-ed in the Vancouver Sun this week saying, you know what, maybe it's time Canada, again, consider hosting an Olympic Games, a Winter Games. And Montreal was mentioned because it turns out the Swiss, I believe, in 2038 may have to back out. How do you feel about Montreal bidding for an Olympic Games?
Well, there's a couple of things we need to do before we do that. Is we need to take care of our city. Like, we have to be able to do the basic of the services, and we need to increase our capacity to attract and retain big events. For instance, I want to make sure that the Olympic Stadium in the roof, and that's going to be ongoing. Right now, we put a lot of money in the roof, but we didn't change the chairs.
Yeah.
Right? So you put all this money into the structure, but you kept the chairs, which are not functional for a new stadium. So my point is, and you have the Palais des Congrès, the convention center that we have in Montreal, we need to regain capacity. We're losing our capacity to have business events or congress to Calgary. So I think in the next 2-3 years, I would say in my mandate, that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that we're regaining that capacity to attract big events. And of course, if we could have the capacity to have an Olympic in Montreal, why not?
So I'm taking that as a no for now.
No, what I'm saying is that I would love to be able to do that. But right now, if I can't even, have a machinery that fills the potholes, how am I going to be able to, sell the idea that I can welcome such a big event? So we have a job to do just to take care of our house, just in the next maybe 2 years.
Okay.
And then say, okay, now we can say, can we bid on these big events? And I absolutely think we can do it.
I bring this up only because those events, it's
Yeah.
not 1976 anymore.
No.
People remember the summer games here and just how much that cost. We
Yeah.
paid for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
But the games now, certainly in the last 8 to 12 years, they generate net benefit to the city in money, in tourism, in recognition.
I mean,
kind of nice for Montreal
well,
if we were
of
able
course.
to do that.
And I always laugh about the fact that, and the parallel with Taylor Swift being in Toronto.
Yeah.
The impact of Taylor Swift in Toronto was over $350 million. I don't have even a venue that could fit in Taylor Swift. So that's my point. So that's what the stadium is so
One
important.
step.
It's like let's just be ready to make sure that we can show the world that yes, we can get big events. So we need to take care of our house first. Just maybe 2 years.
A lot of people were upset that FIFA, they didn't do any World
I was
Cup.
upset.
I know.
I was upset.
So, I mean,
I still believe it's a mistake. I still believe that the city should have raised
speaking,
their hands.
Yes, speaking of which, there have been a lot of tourist dollars coming
Absolutely.
in, and they didn't. Other dreams you might have for the city if you had to, like in a perfect world, like baseball, basketball, soccer.
I mean, just reminding even our Montrealer population that we're a sports city.
Yeah.
And we have such a big events and I mean, there's not a lot of cities in the world that have an MLS. We have Tennis Canada. We have the F1. We have a stadium that can, maybe. So let's just remember that we have that opportunity. I want to make sure that we're not losing any of them, that we're actually increasing their capacity to compete with other cities that would just pay big bucks to get back an MLS team in their city, that would kill to get back Tennis Canada. I mean, for sure. So we just need to make sure that we're keeping those asset infrastructure and that we're actually deploying them and making them shine.
And if you could dream about something to bring here, apart from sports or anything else, is there anything on your mind in a perfect world that you would conceive of doing?
There's so many. I mean, I've always talked about, and Montreal has always been talking about having téléphérique, une télécabine.
Right.
What's that in English?
What is it? En français, c'est quoi?
téléphérique, télécabine, les télécabines. No?
A little over the head transit system in the
Yeah,
sky.
An elevated
Yes.
transit
Like,
system?
like in
Cabins,
the,
yeah.
like they pl-
Cabins.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that
like in
is.
The
Oh my God,
Simpsons.
I'm
You remember that way back when they dreamed of having
I would see something
during
from,
Expo we had a little of that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but very, very
Yeah,
small.
very, very small.
Cities today, like Mexico City, Paris actually inaugurated
Right.
one right now. There's so many of them. It's like when you go skiing, the telecabin.
he doesn't
God,
ski.
You know,
Gondola, like a little
A gondola.
Yes, like going
Like a funicular?
like a
not a
funicular.
funicular, but
Yes, a gondola.
gondola,
Yeah,
like a gondola. Yeah.
Which would go where? That like
Well,
down-
over the city.
downtown, over the
Really?
city, downtown, to the park of L'Île Sainte-Hélène. Absolutely. Like there's many conversations in the past few years of the city of doing one. We would have been an innovative city at the time. Now a lot of other cities
Are
have done
doing-
it before us. Their tourist attractions and their mobility, because you can actually move people quicker, faster, and it's very low cost.
but
As
let's
soon
say
as you said that, my first thought was, remember they were talking about doing a part of the REM line
yes.
downtown
Low
on
tide-
René Lévesque,
yes.
and people are like, "Oh no, that's just gonna be so ugly, and we don't want to see that downtown." I imagine even with something like this, it makes a lot of sense.
they're
There's
beautiful.
pushback on everything in this
Yeah,
city,
but they're
right?
beautiful. And my I think when you look at what Paris has been doing now, when you go look at Paris, you should go. I'll send you a link. You see what Paris did, what Mexico did. They're actually beautiful,
Okay.
and they go through downtown.
Let's just
and
hope it's not.
beautiful.
Let's just
Okay.
hope the people who are making it are not the REM people necessarily, so they can understand
no, I don't.
winter.
I mean, let's go and get the people that did it that's actually working, and then make it.
Not a bad idea. So I'm going to leave the question about do you support the idea of a baseball team coming back to Montreal to next?
Yeah.
Okay. We
No,
won't.
but I mean, if there's a project on baseball, there has to be. It's not my project. It has to be a project that
Private.
private and comes from the ground, not from us, not
Okay.
from me. And we'll see after that.
But if it did come that way, you'd support it.
But it has to be.
It's a-
But it has to be financially supported, not by public funding. Because if I have a choice to make right now in
Yeah.
the next 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
that's not where I would put my money.
Yeah, and that's not where people would say we should spend it now. anymore. I
Absolutely. So
understand.
if the private sector has the meaning, can do it, I mean, absolutely could do it, and I can support it, but I will not put in money into it.
Okay. I'm
And-
just curious before we end. You mentioned the Olympic Stadium, so we know
Yeah.
that the provincial government
Yeah.
is going to end up spending probably over $1 billion just to fix the roof and do what they have to do, and then we end up with a stadium which still, from the inside, is a terrible place to watch pretty much anything. Certainly a
No,
concert,
they changed
right?
the sound.
Okay, so they changed the
Oh,
sound.
it's the whole thing inside is like totally. It's amazing what they've done.
Is the city putting money into
No.
this project? This is all provincial.
It's all provincial.
Okay.
It's and I think my understanding is that they will be respecting the amount of money that they announced, which is $800 million.
No.
Well, that's why I'm here.
Okay, but we know they won't.
Okay.
Right? If you lived in Quebec long enough, we know that's
Okay.
they're not how things work.
I'm just curious about the monorail plan that you were talking about, the téléphérique.
Yeah.
Is there any talk underway for that? Because I hadn't heard.
So I'm still waiting to see what Quebec's going to announce for the east part of Montreal, because there's the next project of transportation that would be the east part of Montreal. I know there's a couple of ideas there from Quebec, and hopefully with the campaign coming, we'll see what's going to happen. My understanding is that they're pretty close to announcing what could be that project in the east part of Montreal.
No potholes in the sky.
No, that's for sure.
Do you ever think potholes would be the number one issue you'd have to deal with in the first 100 days?
No, I'm gonna be honest, but I mean, at the same time, I came in power and I had to deal with the strike of STM. That I didn't count on that
Yeah.
either, and I think we did a pretty good job on that. But potholes, no. I got into one. I got 2 flat tires.
Hey, you blew out 2 tires.
Actually 3, because it was not even 2;
Oh.
it was 3.
And you're not even going to sue the city for this.
No, I won't. I mean, I was laughing. Well, it is complicated, but not only that, I mean, I'm paid by the city. It doesn't make any sense, right? So, no, I'm not going to be asking.
By the way, can I just ask, you brought that up, were you surprised by the reaction to the video you posted on social media? Which I thought was great, but I know some people said, hey, you shouldn't be laughing about this kind of stuff.
Oh, no, I didn't laugh about the pothole. I laugh about the driver
Yeah.
that made the joke, which I found it, because it wasn't set up. Like, he he naturally said, "Well, you're talking about potholes and you got into it." So I laugh about that, not the potholes. The potholes not. It's not
Potholes implicate everybody.
Yeah.
At
yeah,
the point.
exactly. And the other thing is that when I was at the station waiting for the truck,
Tow truck.
the tow truck, people recognized me and they started filming me. So I said, okay, I'd rather talk about it myself
Yeah.
than have other people talk about me without me explaining what happened.
I was trying to speculate the tow truck guy. Did he know you were the mayor? Like right
Well,
away?
yeah.
Did he?
Yeah, he recognized me right away.
Oh, he did. Okay.
So that's why when I asked, I said, well, say hello. He said, oh, yeah, you're talking about how you got into one. So that's why I
Okay.
found it funny.
All right.
Because he
Listen,
didn't mention I was mayor.
I
He
just
recognized
wondered.
we didn't mention it.
I just wondered if he did.
Yeah.
We're out of time. I want to thank you so
Really?
much.
Already?
Yeah, you want to
Yeah.
do
Oh
more?
my
We
God,
can do more.
it's like 35
There's something
minutes
else you wanted
already.
to talk about?
Yeah, and
Yeah, it went so
is-
fast.
As soon as we're done, say, I stayed here too long.
Well, we'll give you an opportunity here. Is there
That was
another
the-
issue that you feel that should be brought up? Go ahead.
Oh my God! I mean, I think we have to remember that Montreal is one of the greatest cities in the world. We have to open ourselves to the world. We kind of forgot about that, and for that we need to make sure that potholes are filled, that their streets are very better managed. But let's just remember that we're a great city, and we have to pop up the
Okay,
volume.
good way to end it. I want to thank you so much
Thank you so
for being
much.
with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon on the next
Thank
edition
you.
of the Cornered Booth podcast.